In this edition of the Confab Lab, we shall be discussing on an evolving concept of cooperative federalism. I am Himanshu Subodh, and today in the expert panel, we have along with us Mr. Pavani Parmeshwar Rao, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India, and the legend, the stalwart, and the doyen of constitutional law. Along with him, we have Dr. Tarkesh Maulia, a star from the Legal Academics Institute of Law, Nirma University. So, what is cooperative federalism? Cooperative federalism is an arrangement in which federal, state and local governments work together, unlike in the federal structure which is enumerated in the Indian Constitution. A few examples of instrumentalities of intergovernmental cooperation in the Indian Constitution include Interstate Councils, Article 263 of Constitution of India, Finance Commission, which is enumerated in Article 280 of the Constitution of India, etc. In this discussion, we shall also be concentrating on the fact that how the present structure of federalism with the unitary bias hampers the interest of the states. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We'll be starting our discussion with a very basic and fundamental question. Sir, do you think that the time has come now where we need to relook at this concept of the federalism which is incorporated in the Indian Constitution?
Yes, always one has to take a relook from time to time. That's how we have been functioning under the Constitution, and how effective the Constitution is, whether any further changes are required. Periodic review is very necessary, and it is desirable. But then one thing we have to keep in mind: do we want one country, or do we want different countries made out of the states? You remember we had a very violent agitation in the state of Tamil Nadu earlier. They wanted to cede away and had a Devastan, a separate land of Tamils. They were worked up around this Hindi issue, forcing Hindu on the country and all that Hindi language. But ultimately, wiser councils prevailed, and things have been managed. So the Tamil Nadu continues to be a part of India. You also remember we had a very serious problem in Punjab, agitation for Khalistan. It was at its peak when the chief minister was killed of the state. The state Gill was the Inspector General of Police at that time, Director General of Police, Inspector General of Police. And P. Narasimha was the Prime Minister during his tenure. They were able to bring down the temples and control the separatist movement. Even today you find in Jammu Kashmir, things are never stable. There is growing unrest. We do not know what will happen tomorrow. With our neighbor actively involved in promoting trouble there, in encouraging separatists, things of this kind. At one time you thought language was a binding factor. You read linguistics, it's 1956. But what happened there? Bihar had to be divided into two parts. Bihar and Jharkhand. Both are Hindi speaking. UP had to divide into two parts. Andhra is an example. And you should see the amount of bitterness generated before creation, dividing Andhra Pradesh, and after division. Is it good for the country? So we have physical tendencies growing in different parts of the country. One more factor you have to keep in mind is we have a very strong hostile neighbor, China. China is trying to interfere with the stability of India in various ways. It is able to win over Nepal to a substantial extent. Even Bhutan, which was so close to us, has become of late somewhat lukewarm in its relationship. Bangladesh, except during when Hasina was the Prime Minister, didn't have a very friendly relationship with us after Mujib was shot down after all Bangladesh, our forces helped Bangladesh to become a free country. Notwithstanding all that, nuclear animosity. What about Sri Lanka, where the problem of Tamils, and you know what a pitch Prabhakaran had at the moment. Rajiv Gandhi had to pay with his life for sending IPKF there. And Pakistan is completely opposed to us in every forum. It tries to accuse India all the while. So if I even Maldives we had earlier, a very friendly government, but now things have changed in Maldives. Look around, so you will not find one single neighbor on whom you can depend and say, he is my brother, who will stand by me. In this situation, if India has to remain united, one country, therefore you cannot help having a centralized government which is powerful to deal with these situations. That's one point. Second thing you see, the leadership trends in the various states. Regional parties have taken hold of different regions in the country, different states. There is national ideology running through them. Therefore, in each one of them, at times get into a confrontation mode with the center. There is little scope for cooperative federalism now in the country in the prevailing atmosphere. In election law being what it is throwing up leadership of a certain type. Whereas India needs statesmanship, which is not coming through the present electoral system. And no Prime Minister is bold enough to embark on electoral reforms. It was said to the date of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He was in favor of the presidential system. He thought that will stabilize Indian polity. That is one point of view. And he constituted the commission, National Commission to be working on the Constitution, with a very highly respected former Chief Justice of India, Samuel Venkatacharya, very erudite Chief Justice, and very powerful members were there. Rasan was there, Swaraj was there, Justice V.P. Jeevan Reddy was there, remember? Irani from journalists, he was there. Many other people were there. It was a very high-powered body it was. They made recommendations in their report in 2002. Look at the report. It paints a disturbing scenario. And what kind of reforms are to be taken, they have indicated. But Vajpayee himself, who constituted the commission, did not have the courage to effectuate those reforms. The system is not ready for it, not allowed to do it. I would like you to read Vajpayee's 13th Deshraj Chaudhary Memorial Lecture delivered in Delhi, which is published in the Indian Bar Review, just before he became Prime Minister of India. He analyzed the ills of our democracy and the kind of reforms that we require. So I, for one, expected that after he became Prime Minister, he would take it, but he could only take it up to this, constituting a commission, but could not implement reforms. The system has its prevailing. He is posing serious threats to the unity and integrity of the nation. Unless we stand united, we fall. That is the saying. United we stand, divided we fall. So there are so many factors which are dividing us. Language divides us. Caste and community divide us. And these are factors found to be very important from an election point of view, their leadership. They have become, their minds are subservient to these influences. They try to cash on these and get votes. Even today, next year, the elections are coming now in UP and Punjab and other places, and you find the nation is getting ready for this communal era. So therefore, in this situation, if we have more federalism than what we have, in the sense more independence, autonomy for the states, etc., in which direction the country will go, I have my own doubts. So India needs a strong center from various point of view, but at the same time, we cannot have absolutely subservient states. We have to safeguard the autonomy of the states, particularly financial autonomy of the states. Now all the resources, financial resources, are constituted financial center. Even part 12 of the Constitution, if you see, finance, property, etc., there are various provisions for distribution of revenues of the center among the states. And a finance commission is called, has been called periodically. But with all that, the states are absolutely dependent on the center. And one more fact you must keep in mind. We have river water disputes, dividing the country, emotional issues, we have water disputes. Can you imagine, 1956 was the state's organization, when at that time the composite state of Madras, Bombay was there. In 1960 or 61, Bombay was reorganized into Gujarat and Maharashtra. The present government of Maharashtra, not present government, a few years back, the then government, it instituted a suit, they filed a suit in the Supreme Court, claiming certain areas which are included in Karnataka, that predominantly Marathi speaking areas, they should be transferred to Maharashtra, Belgaum. And you know, these are issues which will stir up emotions of the people. Similarly, when Kaveri waters were not released, the Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, the people level, farmers are affected. Down the line, the riparian state, the lower riparian. So the emotions rise. My worry is these rising emotions strike at the root of unity of the country. So basic question we have to address is, do we require a unified India, a strong unified India, or an India which is always fighting within itself, one state against other, one group against other, one linguistic group against another linguistic group, and so on. And with demands for secession growing in different parts. Even today, there are people who are working for a separate Pakistan. That seed which was sown earlier, that did not die. Only the movement was suppressed, was not controlled, but again it is raising its head. So in these situations, in fact, if you look at Justice Narayan Mahajan's autobiography, looking back, I would like to read it. He pleads for a strong unitary government. But to my mind, that is difficult. In a country which is separated by so many languages, so many cultures, diverse religious faiths, and so on and so forth. So we cannot have a completely unitary system. That's not workable. So the founding fathers would rightly created a quasi-federal setup, constitution. And in Mumbai's case, in the case of the Bharati's case, yes, the Supreme Court has declared federalism a main part of the structure of the constitution. Now nobody can alter it. Nobody can make it a unitary state. We remain federal, but to the extent it is federal, that much we can certainly safeguard. But the question arises, is this federation working satisfactorily? As I said, states have become absolutely dependent financially on the center. That's not a happy situation at all. States are governed by some different parties, center is one different party. Center likes to use its purse strings to discipline the states or to teach them a lesson. This should not happen. That has to be concluded.
You talked about the financial autonomy to the states.
Yes.
Sir, initially in the 14th Finance Commission report, the allocation of the budget to the states were 42%. Now the GST has come into the picture. Don't you think that GST would weaken the idea of the entire, GST would subserve the interests of the states?
Now, the GST is yet to be take a final shape because Congress party is suggesting some amendments to the
fundamental. They want a capping on the
that's right.
The tax which is to be imposed under that
imposed. So still GST is not in the final shape.
Okay.
And so we have to see how it is. But one thing is, if GST is going to benefit the country as a whole, number one, the people who are the taxpayers, if it is going to benefit the people, then the only thing that we require is safeguarding the interests of states.
Okay.
In the matter of allocation of revenue, which GST brings in. If that is ensured, that no state is worse off than what it is now, in the matter of VAT or sales tax or whatever it is, taxes. In fact, GST proposes to abolish entry tax,
Okay.
which they head up revenue for the states in the state list. But you must ensure in the GST that interest and financial interests of the states are protected and union interests are protected. They are not made absolutely dependent on the center. There should be a built-in mechanism of distribution of this revenue among the states, a fair distribution, and also need-based distribution. All states are not equal as it is in terms of financial stability. So therefore, to my mind, it has positive advantages. Number one, it is supposed to encourage foreign investment in a big way. It is a single point tax, which is, and also for the citizens' point of view also, is paying so many different taxes, consolidated, one tax you pay, that is good. But at the same time, I personally feel it should not be left to the government to raise the tax any time they like and raise it to such a level that again it becomes a burden on the people. So some balancing is very necessary. You have to balance the interests of the SSC, of the common man, the taxpayers' interests you have to see predominantly. You must also see the interests of attracting foreign investment and so on, and then improving the commerce and industry if it gives in a manner that gives boost to that. Also, you must safeguard the interests of the states and their needs you have to balance, and therefore this involves good deal of balancing mechanism. And this also an agency must create which will be able to dispassionately do the needs of different states and then try to cater to the needs. So therefore we have to have built-in safeguards in GST which will take care of all these concerns. That's my view.
Sir, recently the debate pertaining to Article 263, that talks about the interstate councils, that got heated up.
Yes.
Sir, this is the provision which strengthens the idea of cooperative federalism. Do you think that the lackluster functioning of this interstate council is a threat to the cooperative federalism?
See, from the beginning, this particular article has not been used and the potential of the article has not been realized. From the beginning, it is. It's a very useful thing it is.
Yes.
Now it is becoming increasingly difficult to operate interstate council for the reason. In Tamil Nadu, you have got AIA, DMK for the timing in power, otherwise DMK in power. It is optional for them whether to go with the center or not, go with neighboring states or not. They have problems with Kerala, Mullaperiyar, they have got problems with Karnataka, Kaveri, they have got various problems with neighbors. So therefore, if so long as states are having interstate problems, each state with its neighbors, and these problems are growing, interstate council requires a dispassionate discussion of the problems and collective decision making to resolve those problems. That is what is required. Now, the center is run by a government which has its own mindset. It says, I will destroy this party, that party, this kind of a thing they speak of. And so therefore, the atmosphere in which this interstate council should function, that is missing. If that is missing, then the very basis of a free debate, an objective debate, discussion, and finding a genuine solution, the chances are very weak. That's why it is ineffective. It in fact requires a common concern on the part of all the state governments, which is across the board, and the center to solve problems on a rational basis. Water problems can be solved, water problems can be resolved in the interstate councils itself. There is no need for them to rush to the court and so on. But that common concern is missing, unfortunately, the way our democratic system is being operated. So that's the difficulty. It is growing up more and more regional leadership, which has no common concern. That is the difficulty in making this institution a success.
Sir, one more question, that is in the light of the recent controversies that took place in Uttarakhand and then Arunachal Pradesh regarding the appointment of the governors. Sir, governor is appointed by the on the aid and advice by the president on the aid and advice of the cabinet. So that is some kind of governor is acting as a proxy agent of the center. And that, do you think that might be a threat to the interests of the states, right, which took place in Arunachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, the same scenario?
That's a very important question, a current question. Institutional governor is required, but the constitution does not contemplate a partisan governor. The institution has been completely downgraded. degenerated, and governorship by constitution made a party post. This is very wrong on the part of the current government. They made governors resign, appointed the previous regime, and planted their own people.
Okay.
And then they want to use these governors for toppling the democratic governments,
Okay.
and then try to pave way for them to form a government,
Okay.
indirectly or directly, with the rebels of the ruling party. This is absolutely striking at the root of democracy.
Indeed, sir.
Democracy means you have to respect the opposition.
Okay.
You have to take the opposition with you. See what happened during the Second World War in England. That was life and death struggle for them, struggle for survival.
Indeed, sir.
And both the opposition and the ruling party joined together to form a national government. Sir Winston Churchill headed the government. And they worked as a team. They shared the concern of the nation.
Okay.
They knew it was a life and death struggle for them. And they worked as a team. And then ultimately, providentially, they succeeded in the war, Second World War, paying a huge cost. And then look at the electorate. For war they wanted Churchill, but for peace and rebuilding they wanted Attlee.
Okay.
Churchill could not gather strength in spite of the spectacular victory that he got it, a difficult victory which he wrenched from the jaws of defeat. So therefore we need that spirit. Unfortunately, present leadership, I call it bankruptcy of leadership. They are so short-sighted. They are thinking of their party and their future and power. They are not thinking of the nation. That is very unfortunate it is. So unless that common concern is there, and you cannot appoint, you should not define these offices by appointing your party men. For instance, Speaker's post. You know the tradition of Speaker's post. You read James Bryce, American Constitution. He says, once elected as Speaker, as he leaves his chair, he should occupy the election and moves towards the chair of the Speaker. He should shut off his party affiliations and be a neutral person.
Okay.
Somnath Chatterjee was like that.
Indeed, sir.
Somnath Chatterjee, he didn't put the pressure of his Communist Party on the nuclear deal issue and to the parliament.
Indeed, sir.
They wanted to vote
Yes, sir.
against it. He said, no, I will not do that. I am here as a speaker, represent the entire house. I am not a party man here.
Indeed.
That requires certain people of that stature we require, that caliber and fiber we require. But where are they? So therefore, the present government's policy of using these constitutional offices as party posts is absolutely unconstitutional. It is against the interest of the nation and it is anti-national, and they should not be allowed to go on like this. They are responsible for destabilizing government in Uttarakhand
Indeed, sir.
and also in Arunachal Pradesh. And Supreme Court and the High Court, you must salute the High Court Chief Justice Yusuf of Uttarakhand, who gave a very beautiful judgment, which is completely consistent with the constitutional principles and ethos. And also the Supreme Court in this Arunachal Pradesh judgment.
Indeed, sir.
Therefore, the courts have, and see the burden that's being thrown on the courts. You do wrong things. You appoint wrong people in the office and misuse those offices, governor's office. You bring about destabilization in the state, driving the people to go to courts, and ultimately court has resolved all this. And where are we? So therefore, I feel abolishing governor's post is not the answer.
Okay.
The answer is in pressurizing, throwing out this government which uses this kind of things, and having a new government which will not do this. Sarkari Commission dealt with this problem.
Okay.
What kind of person should be a government? He said, never appoint a politician unless he has been away from politics for quite some time. Don't bring him in. You need experienced people. You know, during the British rule, they appointed some good ICS officers as governors. And we appointed some of our chiefs of army staff as governors. So you should bring in neutral people to the offices. Now, for instance, Jammu Kashmir have got Anil Vora, a neutral person, former Home Secretary, as governor of Jammu and Kashmir. We require people of that quality and not our party people who do your bidding and then use the constitutional machinery. You cause breakdown in the states,
Okay.
constitutional machinery through the governor. It's wholly unconstitutional is what's happening.
So just one last question.
Yes.
Sir, as you suggested the classical idea of federalism which is incorporated in the Indian constitution, there are several instances. For example, when there is any relations between India and Sri Lanka, the rights of the Tamil Nadu people from Tamil Nadu, those are suppressed. When it comes to India and Nepal, the rights of the people from Bihar, they are suppressed. The interests of the Bihar and Tamil Nadu, and there are several examples. So don't you think that the cooperative federalism should be incorporated so that the interests of the state should be taken care of?
See, this cooperative federalism concept is very important. The first word, the key word is cooperative. Unless you have mindset to cooperate,
Indeed.
how you make it a success? Do you have the mindset to cooperate? Take TMC for instance. TMC has its own agenda, its own priorities, its own way of thinking, and Indian government has its own. And similarly, Nitish Kumar in Bihar, he has his own viewpoint, and Tamil Nadu has its own viewpoint. Why is there the desire to have cooperative federalism? Unless states need it, they desire it, they are inclined towards it, they want it, we cannot make it a reality. Idea is very good, but how do you realize this idea, translate it into action? That is the problem we have. So I do feel we have to have a strong center from various points of view to meet the threats from foreign countries, to meet the physical tendencies in various states which go to the point of asking that we want to break away our own. What is that in the education in Kashmir Valley? We want our own separate state for us. They don't say that openly that they want to be part of Pakistan. They want to say three options, whether to be part of India, or join Pakistan, or become an independent country. And majority of them will ask for an independent country. So therefore, where are we going in this way? Therefore, these are the forces which have to be contained, controlled, if country has to remain a country. But if we are willing to get into, broken up into different bits, then where are we? India will go and we emerge. Pakistan on one side, Afghanistan on one side, other thing on one side, Kashmiristan on one side. This cannot be the future. There is no escape from a centralized government. But there has to be fair distribution of powers among the states. States has to effectively enjoy their autonomy, whatever is given to them. That will not happen if center controls the purse strings and states are the mercy of the center. That should not happen.
This is it from this session of Confab Lab. We are highly enlightened by the words of wisdom which Sir has spoken. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Thank you again. Thank you very much.